Welcome to the Daily Wrap on DCTV. I'm Claire, at the desk, where today the money is very loud indeed. Australia stacking debt, a record chip IPO out of Hefei, sovereign cloud in Tokyo, and a British supercomputer that raised the cash and still can't find its power. The whole spread of the boom in one day.
And I'm Wenjia, on the road. Claire hears the money. I hear the transformers, and today they're humming louder. Two of the biggest stories aren't about dollars at all. They're about whether the grid actually shows up on time. Let's get into it.
We start in Australia, where NEXTDC keeps stacking debt. Calkine reports a $2.3 billion facility now backing the build-out. And this is the same story we flagged last week, when they upsized senior facilities to $1.6 billion, adding a fresh $500 million. So the line keeps growing. My question, as always, yes, but who's the tenant filling all that new capacity?
That's the desk question. Mine's simpler. Where are the megawatts and when do they energize? Which brings me straight to Sydney. AirTrunk is seeking a $3 billion loan for a Sydney data center that's Ming Tiandi's red. Now, this is the same operator that a couple of weeks back was inching toward a Singapore REIT listing and signing renewable power deals in Malaysia. But it's seeking, not closed, so my 2028 clock doesn't move on a term sheet. Steel moves it. Show me the substation.
Staying in the region, Stack Infrastructure is flaunting a new 864-megawatt contract, and the AFR frames it against a $25 billion plus APAC sale process. 864 megawatts is enormous. I lived through the telecom overbuild Global Crossing, WorldCom, dark fiber at 3 cents on the dollar, where the capacity was real and the tenant wasn't, so I want the counterparty named before I clap.
See, that's where we split, Claire. That's 864 megawatts of physical demand. Cooling, substations, crews already committed. The steel is real, whatever the term sheet does. Now let me take you somewhere the steel is stuck. The UK. Capacity reports that Nscale's Essex site, pitched as Britain's largest AI supercomputer, could be delayed again on grid power. They're now exploring alternative power solutions. And remember, just last week they closed a $900 million credit facility. The money is there. The electrons aren't. On the honest ledger, that slips my clock back about a week.
And here's where Wenjia wins one. I assumed a fresh $900 million facility clears the bottleneck. It doesn't. You cannot wire cash into a substation. If Nscale's alternative power gets Essex energized, then the capital was never the constraint. Put it on the wall. She's right. To the deal desk. NDTV Profit reports India's competition regulator has cleared the KKR-led buyout of ST Telemedia Global Data Centers. We've tracked this one since the winter KKR and Singtel building stakes, back in February, the acquisition through spring, a Korea Hall opening in June. Now a key approval lands. The ownership is settling. The tenant question travels with it.
EdgeConneX, meanwhile, is laying out its Malaysia AI vision. That's TechWire Asia. This is a platform that just weeks ago pulled a $1.75 billion check from Canada's CPP into the EQT-backed build. So the capital's fresh, and Malaysia's the destination, land, power, and water, lining up in Johor's shadow.
CPP, I can tell them from GIC and ADIA like wines. Patient money, long holds. That's exactly the right kind of capital for a 15-year asset. The wrong kind to rush, though. Sovereign or not, lead times don't care. Over to Oracle, which the FT says is leading the race to supply Japan with top-secret cloud, proposing an air-gapped network as Tokyo tightens security on sensitive data. Worth noting, Oracle's had a bumpy stretch on headcount and deals lately, so a sovereign-grade mandate here would be a meaningful anchor tenant.
Physical truth from Thailand. NTT and Fuji Electric have started work on a data center substation, Fuji's first such project in the country. This matters more than it sounds. A substation is the gate. Transformers on long lead times, protection gear, the interconnect. NTT just broke ground on a Chonburi campus days ago, and without the substation energized, that campus is a very expensive shed. Steel before servers. A substation is where a data center stops being a drawing and starts being a building. Claire, you take the silicon.
Gladly. Intel is putting $5.7 billion into expanding chip production in Ireland, more manufacturing equipment and research as AI and high-performance demand climbs. Per the tech capital, selfishly. Cheaper, closer silicon shaved a couple of basis points off my body model this morning. Still doesn't pencil. The hurdle rate holds, and the money story of the day, CXMT, Changshin Memory, priced its Shanghai IPO at 8.66 yuan a share, valuing the Hefei memory maker around $85 billion. The FT calls it the largest Chinese chip listing since 2010. SCMP has the pricing, with $10 billion sought on the back of AI memory demand. That's not a data center, but every hall we cover runs on that memory.
Related, from SCMP, a Shanghai startup, Dongfang Xuanxin, backed by state funds and domestic giants, has unveiled an aggressive AI chip roadmap using alternative architectures to route around export controls. Ambitious on paper, I'll believe the throughput when I see a rack of them running hot in a real hall.
A roadmap is a promise, a fab is a fact. Speaking of a tenant who actually signed, CleanSpark has locked a tenant on a 20-year lease for its Sandersville, Georgia data center, $6.6 billion in contracted revenue over the term. Now that is the sentence I like. A name, a term, a number. 20 years is a long time to underwrite a counterparty, but at least here there is a counterparty to underwrite.
India's HCL Tech is entering data centers, a $364 million investment, with capacity scaling to 50 megawatts. 50 megawatts is a starter campus, not a hyperscale swing, but it's an IT services giant deciding it wants to own the concrete, not just rent it. And then there's Spain, which today reads like its own newscast. Half a dozen items. Let's move fast. Ferrovial is putting €1 billion into a Madrid campus, starting with a 60-megawatt facility, 40 of that usable IT load. That IT to total ratio tells you the cooling and power overhead baked in. And Krollmap is planning a 150-megawatt campus in Aragon, among the largest announced in that region. Spain's dry, sunny, and increasingly wired.
On the transactional side, EdgeMode is looking to offload multiple Spanish development sites, buyers named as Pure DC and Spark AI Foundry. Development sites changing hands before they're built. That's the land banking layer of this boom, and it's usually the first place froth shows up.
Rounding out Iberia, A1 Digital is bringing its exascale sovereign cloud into Spain. Nunsis Cloud is adding 150 racks in Paterna. And the universities are spending Granada adding a second AI supercomputing system on a €3.5 million European grant. Malaga putting $10 million into its Picasso machine. Research Compute, quietly compounding.
And one from the Frontier or Atomic, a Pasadena startup out of stealth this year, has raised $300 million to build a 20,000-qubit fault-tolerant quantum computer. That's a long-dated bet on a machine that doesn't exist yet. File it under Ask Again in 5 years, but the capital's real today. So that's the day. Debt piling up in Australia, a record chip listing in Shanghai, a UK supercomputer waiting on electrons, and Spain quietly becoming a continent's backroom. The capital is still running ahead of the megawatts. I just keep asking who eats the loss if a tenant walks, and that's the read from the desk.
And I'll keep asking where the power is and when it energizes, because a substation starting in Thailand and a stalled one in Essex told today's real story. Money's easy, transformers are hard, more from the road soon.